My name is Pete Preston. This is Marketplace Growth by Accoil, where we talk about the topics that marketplace partners want to know about when it comes to growing their installs and, of course, their revenue. Before we go into today's topic, I do want to start with a point zero, and that is knowing your ideal customers. And not only knowing the ideal customers, but who is your ideal current customer. Not the people that you ultimately want to sell to when the product is top of the charts. And I know you're going to get there. I believe in you. We're talking about the customers that are going to take you from 0 to 1, 1 to 2, 2 to 10,000. Who do you need to sell to within the next, say, 6 to 12 months to get you to that next level of revenue in your business? Or perhaps you want to medal on the marketplace, you want to go from bronze, you want to go all the way up to platinum. Who are those customers that are going to get you there? If you don't know who you're selling to, it's really hard to get the rest of these things right. First thing I'm going to talk about may seem a little bit unconventional and not appropriate for this video, but it's something that we used at Proforma and something that I think you can use for your business today, and that is detailed use cases. If you've built your documentation and you've done user stories perhaps, and you've talked to any customers and you know how they are using your product, that's the best place to start, but go a bit further. So a detailed use case is not just talking about how a customer can use your product, it's how they can use your product in that whole workflow that is the Atlassian marketplace ecosystem, whatever you want to call it. Where do you fit into a Jira user's day-to-day journey? Where do you fit into a Confluence user's workflow? Talk about how a customer might get into your product, and then talk about how they might exit your product and what that might take them to and what other tools that might be. So paint them a picture of how your product fits into a day in life of your user. How does that drive traffic to your marketplace listing page? The way that we used our use cases back in the Proforma days was publishing them on our documentation space. From that, we got SEO benefits. We got people that were looking at the product to read these use cases, ideally see themselves in the product, see themselves using the product, and then on every single use case, on every page of our documentation for that matter, you could get back to the marketplace listing page. So we would link to these use cases from the marketplace. We used SEO, we would talk about it on socials, we would have bookmarks and email footers and all this sort of stuff. We talked about the content and the use cases just about everywhere that we could to get people looking at those, and then using those pages to drive and direct people back to the marketplace listing page. Now that community has App Central, that's another great place to start posting things like use cases. And this is a great reason, I think, to go a bit broader with your use cases, right? How does your app, again, fit into that whole workflow? And by doing that, you get to talk about Atlassian products. So when you publish on App Central, it's not all me, but you are putting your app kind of in the spotlight there, but in context of all these other tools. And it's also an opportunity, if you want to team up with other marketplace partners or SaaS vendors to say, hey, we're going to develop this use case. Do you want to be the next step in that? And I think that would be a really cool way to tell the story of your product, how it maybe leads into someone else's product as well. Number 2 is something that you're probably expecting me to say, and that's paid ads. For a long time, I was not a fan of paid ads when it came to being a marketplace partner. I've changed my mind on that. I've heard a few success stories recently, and I think that there are ways that you can test and run ads that make economic sense. One of the questions that always comes up when we talk about running paid ads is, where do you direct people to? So if they click the ad, where do they go? Do they go to the marketplace listing page? I would say sometimes. Do they go to content like those use cases that we just talked about? Maybe your ads go to solution papers, user guides. Take your pick of destination, as long as there is a clear link from that destination page over to your marketplace listing where customers can click try it now or buy it now. Some of the platforms I would consider testing immediately are Google Ads, Bing Ads. Yeah, Bing Ads. I would also look at going onto LinkedIn and running some ads on there to experiment with users, segmentation, all that sort of stuff, as well as the destinations that you're sending people to. If you're going to try paid ads, I just strongly suggest that you set a cap on your spend. Don't blow a budget on these things. You want to understand what's working and what's not. So make sure that you're spending enough time and money on this that you get, a significant number of results that you can tell whether or not it's working, and gives you the opportunity to test ad copy, destinations, that sort of stuff. But Set a maximum budget that you're going to work on per experiment so that you don't blow your entire marketing budget for the year. And I'm hoping that you actually have a marketing budget for the year. Some other places that I think you can experiment, and I haven't done this recently, so I can't really speak to how effective they would be, but I would look at Twitter. I would look at places like Reddit. Can you advertise on those platforms if your kind of customers are going to be there? Number 3 is using your own data to tell stories. If you can use your product and the data that comes out of that product without sharing any personal information or anything that you're not supposed to be sharing, if you can use the data that your app produces to tell a story about who's using your product, how they're using your product, how they're winning at your product, I would go and look at that. Does your data tell a compelling story? Start writing about that. Hey, make some videos about it. Post those on YouTube, LinkedIn, on the community. Just get out there and start sharing the story of your users. Make them the hero of those stories. And start talking about the wins that they're getting with your product. And it'll build awareness that your product exists in the first place, which for a lot of partners is really the first problem that you need to solve. I'll share an example of that from the Proforma days. Now, we couldn't see what people were entering into forms. What we could see is roughly get a sense of what they were using their forms for. And so over time, the more people that used forms and built forms, we could get a sense of which teams were using them, what kind of processes they might be using them for. And of course, we had to make some educated guesses on what was actually happening. But once we started using that data, it allowed us to build some of those use cases I talked about earlier, but it also helped us tell a story and share some interesting news about what we saw happening in the market right now. What were the use cases and the trends that we saw developing there? And it just made for interesting stories and a good thing to go out and talk to the market about. Fourth and final thing for the day is sponsorships. I know talking about in-person events may not seem, yet again, like a great way to send people to your marketplace listing page, but this whole ecosystem runs on awareness. It's true for pretty much any product. And one of the best ways that I've found to get awareness for your product and to get people looking for and finding you on the marketplace is actually going to these events. I'm not just talking about sponsoring team, which can be pretty expensive and making the ROI on that harder to achieve. But talking about smaller events, perhaps high velocity, if your customers are using JSM predominantly. Also talking about events like Unleash. Are you an Agile and DevOps? If those are the customers that you're serving, go to these things. Sponsor a booth, show up, but just go and be there. Some of the other sponsorship opportunities that are out there include newsletters, YouTube channels, ACE events, Atlassian community events, that kind of thing. Where are your customers? Again, this is going to go back to point 0 at the top of the video. Who are your ideal current customers? Where are they hanging out physically and digitally? And can you get a presence and little billboard in front of them? Are there YouTube channels that talk directly to that ideal current customer of yours? Are there newsletters that talk to that ideal current customer of yours? Are there ACE events talking about topics that relate really well to your product that could be a good showcase for your product? One of the things that we did at Proforma was develop a list of talks and material that we could give to Atlassian user groups at the time, what are now called an ACE, and just share that out and let as many people know as we could that were involved in the community that we've got this material. Running an ACE is not anyone's day job. It's a lot of work for a lot of people. And if there's anything that you can do to make the life of an ACE leader easier, give them some content, give them something to talk about, they'll be more than happy to reach out and connect with you and have that come into the group. By doing that, by showing up at events, by sponsoring events and making people aware of your product in the right places and talking to the right people, you will drive traffic back to that marketplace listing page. Will you be able to attribute it to anything? That's really hard to say. All I can tell you is you're just going to have to trust your gut on some of these things. Go out, build awareness of your brand, of your products, the problems that you solve, and people will come to your marketplace listing. Recap. We talked about the first thing today, or the 0th thing, is understanding who your ideal current customer is. You need to know who you're selling to in order for any of this stuff to work. If you know who you're selling to, you know where they hang out, you know what language you need to speak to them, what you need to talk about, what stories you need to tell, and what a day in the life looks like. Which brings us to point number 1, detailed use cases. Put your product into their lives. Tell stories with your product. How do they find your product in their workflow? How do they exit your product in their workflow and go off and do their job? How does your product, help them accomplish what they need to do today, this week, this month, whatever that is. Number 2 was paid ads. Get on Google, LinkedIn, Twitter, Bing, Reddit, Quora, Pinterest, I don't know. Wherever your customers are, try to run ads. Remember to set a budget, run some experiments, test it out. Just be very, very deliberate with the whole thing, and you'll learn some important lessons. And ideally, you find ways that you can reach your customers and get them to buy. Number 3 was using your data to tell better stories. If you start talking about this stuff wherever your customers are, you'll attract the attention of the right people because you're telling stories that relate to them and the work that they're doing. And number 4, sponsorships. What events can you sponsor? Where can you show up? What can you be doing that gets you out there and actually in person meeting these people? And on this one, I'm not just talking about customers, but if you're a marketplace partner and you want to reach solution partners, that's a great way to do it. Show up in person, shake hands, shirt front people, say hi, tell them what you do, ask them what they are working on, more importantly, and how you might be able to help them. Howdy, thanks so much for watching that video. If you got value out of it, please hit that subscribe button. We launch one of these videos every single week. We really, really would love to hear from you. What else can we talk about that can help you as a marketplace partner? Hit subscribe, send us a note. We look forward to hearing from you. See ya.